Hello everyone, it's Vike here, and today I'll be showcasing my Digi-Police deck, and I have been really liking, especially in the BT16 format, just because the new Commander line and the new Tank Digimon I think are really powerful for the deck. And I'll be showcasing this on the free Home Zero DCGO, so if you want to look it up, you can just head to his channel and whatnot. And again, if you guys really are enjoying my content, don't forget to like, comment, and subscribe, and stay tuned for my other videos. And now let's just go into the deck profile. So of course we start off with our eggs, that being the 4 of Kyokimon from BT15. Now I like to run this for two reasons. One, because it's a free evo for Ryudamon, which I also do run, along with the fact that you're able to sometimes trigger this yourself if you keep your mind like tamers under, so you can guarantee yourself a draw. And even if your opponent just has a suspended body, it's still really good because again you get a draw on their turn, and anytime they become unsuspended, they also get a draw, which some matches it might kind of come up. Like for example, if you're fighting say a World Grand 1 deck for example, and they unsuspend and they don't kill the body that has the egg, you of course get the draw, and just other cases like that. And of course I run the 4 Ryudamon just so I can use this style main to kind of give it protection for the turn, which I think is very helpful just because it kind of acts like timer in that way, where you kind of want them to use an option to remove it, so it helps out a lot there. And again, you get like a free tamer out of it, which helps out the deck because Shulin is also a memory setter. Any inherit I think comes out quite a bit, especially if you're fighting like a deck that's like also like low play cost value, because say if you're swinging with your high commander on, you could like swing with that, suspend with their own guys, and you can also get the Kyokimon draw if it survives, which is really helpful. And again, I still really like Ryuda, so that's why I ended up just sticking with it. I'm going to do the next ones together, and that's of course the BT14 Commandramon and the BT16 one. This one of course is mandatory as a follow because it's your main soldier. It grabs basically any of your Digi-Police and Digi stuff, which is really helpful, and even grabs the option, which is actually kind of insane, and I really like it for that. And of course it gives you stack protection, which can come up quite a bit since you want your stuff to stay on board as much as possible. And this new Commander one I really like just because it gives a buff to all your other like Digi and Digi-Police stuff. So against red decks, you usually get Crimson Blade, and this can kind of help you dodge the Crimson Blade's pull, and also along with that give your stuff extra DP to kind of dodge some DP minus, which again can be very helpful since stuff like Numamons running around, they have a lot of DP minus and stuff like Heavens, in Magnetmon decks and whatnot. So again, just getting the extra DP can come up once in a while, and I really like that it's all turns, along with the fact that it shares it with the inherit, so no matter what, you're likely to get a 1k buff no matter what. And of course I won the 4 High Commandramon, and this is really good just because again it lets you play a body for free where you basically all you do is attack. And while in my case I do whiff with it sometimes, it's still really good because you're still able to get a check in if it's early enough, along with the fact that if you have to shoot tamer under, and if it lives both checks, you just did 2 damage with it if you're able to get the alliance off, which is fantastic. And I've actually gotten that a few times here and there, so again that's really good. And it has the same inherit as your BT14 Commandramon, which is really good just because that way, say if you're missing this one, you could have the High Commandramon in the stack and be able to still have some safety with your higher level Digimon. I also still like to run at least some Ginumon, and in this case I run 2 of the BT15 one, and I still think it's pretty good just because you're able to suspend anything, and if you just so happen to have the tamer, you get the unsuspend effect, and it has blocker normally, which can kind of help since it's not a Diva grade Digimon, so having blocker innately can still be good. And the inherit is similar to the Ryudamon, where it's able to suspend anything as long as it's like same play class or lower, which again another way to trigger the Kyokimon and just kind of like suspend down a blocker, which can be still helpful because sometimes you just have a random blocker that you don't want to deal with at that current moment, like in Numamon and just again a bunch of other decks, especially ones that also can use the Ubamon that was released in BT16, so on and so forth. These next ones I'm going to do together, and that's 3 copies of the new Sealsdramon and 1 copy of the Numamon. And while they have similar purpose in terms of being able to rush for a game, I just like having more copies of this just because you're able to kind of refresh your deck by putting 3 stuff on the top of it, along with having the cannot be blocked part, and that can come up quite a bit, and I really like it. And it has the same inherit as this Commandromon, which gives your stuff plus 1k, which again is really useful. And also this one doesn't need a Sasuke in hand, and I think with Digi-Police it's kind of easy to get stuff in trash for its effect anyways. But I still like running at least one Numamon no matter what, just because again it's another way to rush along with giving anything blockable. And since I run stuff like Vikemon Ace in the deck, that doesn't get blockable from any of the other effects, so having a potential to have my Vikemon Mega have blocker is still really good. And I really do enjoy the new Tangromon, and I think it's definitely one of the best ultimates for the deck, just because you're able to do a lot with it, because you look at top 3 and you reduce all the play costs of your opponent's Digimon, and then proceed to either top deck or bottom deck, and then delete one of the full costs or less. And this really does help set up for your Bigadramon play, because you're able to say delete a lower cost body with Tangromon, and then just go into your Bigadramon and kind of just delete whatever else. And I really do like the inherit, just because it's a D-Digivolve, so you're able to not only say play stuff with Bigadramon, you're able to kind of just D-Digivolve something. And this is all turns, so no matter what, if somehow you end up playing another Digimon on your opponent's turn, you're still able to kind of play and kind of mess with their field, which I really do love. And again, I think you definitely need this at full no matter what. I'm also going to do the next 2 ultimates together, and I like to run one of the BT14 Kogujamon and 3 of the Hisoryumon. The Kogujamon I wasn't really a major fan of in PT14, but only ran it because I felt like I had to, just because there wasn't enough to fill the space with. But now I only put it at 1 just because again it's a possible way to get more Digi-Police and stuff on the board, and the old tones inherit isn't the worst, but again I don't really want enough Commandromons to justify playing in Mo. But again, it's still kind of useful sometimes just to free play another body to get another block and whatnot. And I went 3 Hisoryumon just because I found that I really liked the effect to kind of go into one of your Digi-Police or Duplicate stuff for essentially free, which again is very powerful, just because it's basically either A free bomb deck with something like Oyumon, or B, it's able to kind of just go into Bigadramon and kind of delete a small body, along with at the end of the turn just play stuff for free, which again you kind of want to be doing that as much as possible, and I really like it for that. And the inherit is also mega useful, because say if you either suspend 4 lions, you get to unsuspend, and with how DBK likes to spam out bodies, you're able to unsuspend, get alliance for a second time, which again can come up, and I've done it quite a bit, and I just love it for that. I'm going to do both the Digi-Police Megas first, and in this case I'm going to run 3 copies of Bigadramon and 2 copies of Oyumon. This is still one of your main boss monsters, and I really like it just because in a format like BT16 where a lot of people want to go wide, you're able to kind of at least masterly off stuff like that. And of course it's really good just because you're able to kind of swarm the field with the end of turn and kind of get a lot of other smaller bodies out, which can be really helpful, along with giving everything blocker. And I still really like running Bigadramon, and I want to see at 3 just because I can see as much as possible. And then only 2 copies of Oyumon just because for me I just still like it, and I still want to see it as often as I can, and that's why I'm only really running 2, because the bottom deck can come up, but again I still mostly want to see my Bigadramon. But this is still a really powerful card because it also has blocker innately, along with the fact that when it becomes suspended, you're able to play one of your smaller bodies. So say if it's on your turn and say you alliance with like whatever, or just just normally just suspend it, you're able to just play out something else, so you can kind of combo this off with again this guy, so that way you go able to kind of refill the deck and get rush. Or again you could just play the Ginyu-mon and kind of suspend down a blocker. Again, this is still really good, and winning at 2 I've always felt like it was good enough for me anyways. And of course I like to run 2 Vikemon, and I think it's a pretty solid mega for the deck because it does quite a bit for what you want to do, especially with the new Tangromon, where it pairs up with that pretty nicely, just because not only are you able to delete smaller bodies along with low reduced play cost, the inherit is really helpful for it, just because that way if you have Vikemon out and say if you play another smaller body, you're able to Digivolve it and kind of helps that for that. Especially it combos well with the Digimon, where if you free play one of your ultimates, it's a really nice ace setup, and I really like it for that. And again, I think it just kind of helps deal with bigger stacks and kind of just helps deal with wider decks as well. And I like running it too, because the deck does such a lot, and if you're able to see it early enough, it can kind of help you out in a lot of cases. Now for the options, I run 3 of the really long option name, and it's still really good because it's another soldier. And while it puts stuff to top deck, it's still decent because that way you can kind of rig your next draw in that case, but it still adds any Brigade and Digi-Police stuff, which is really useful. And again, its delay is be able to kind of like look at the top 3 cards, play a full cost, and then trash the rest. So of course, if you play any of your rookies ultimates, it can be really helpful because say if you play something like this, it's another search. If you play this, it's a free suspend, and then so on and so forth. It's just a really solid card for the deck and adds more like consistency to it. And the security effect is just, again, just look at stuff and do a lot of searching, and I really like it. And seeing at 3 is really good. And I run 1 DCD bomb because sometimes I just want to use an option to kind of remove something. And if I do have my trash set up right, I'm able to at least delete a smaller body. And again, just having at least 1 removal option, at least something to kind of disrupt your opponent, can still be really helpful. And in this case, I also like to run 3 trainings. Since I do have a decent amount of search with the deck, I think 3 is fine enough because again, you also have the really long option name. So having 3 of this is just, again, good enough. And it's still really good just because since basically everything's black, you're able to at least reduce everything's cost. And since all your megas basically cost 4, that can kind of help you, reduce the cost and whatnot. And again, training is training. It's really good for being 2 cost. Now for the tamers, I just like to run a 3-3 split of both Shulin and also Satsuki. This of course helps you out in a lot of cases just because it's your dedicated memory setup, along with being able to give alliance and reboot. In this case, your main aspect is the alliance, and you're able to kind of do a lot of damage with it. And it really helps the deck just because since you do want to build wide, you're able to have more targets for the alliance, and I really like the tamer in that aspect. And Satsuki's here of course to not only gain you memory, but say if you don't have Shulin, or say if you want to make sure your swing's safe with say your low level stuff, you can obviously just have that jamming, and again, it's really helpful in that case. And since you also do run Numamon, it's just another rush target, and I think having 3 of each again is good enough for me. I saw them more than enough, and it's a just good number because I feel if you run more, you just might break on the tamers and whatnot. And of course, I'm going to go over some options you could do to see if you want to change up the ratios or just have different ideas for what you could put in the deck. And I think let's start off with the Digi Eggs, and I kind of put these 3 here. I put the BT8 Kyoko because since you do mindling stuff, you're able to just get the 1k kind of easily. The Cold one from the new War Grade 1 Star deck is pretty useful since a lot of the stuff does have blocker anyways, so you're able to kind of get an extra DP like that, which is kind of helpful. And then of course the Missimon, and I will always suggest this if you're running more of a Commandramon base, just because the Ryudamon would evolve for 1, and I'm not a major fan of that if I don't have to do it. And these 2 are just here for floodgates, so obviously just play any of these 2 if you want to, just depending on your local meta and whatnot. And of course these 2 Commandramons out here just because again I think they're the best ones, especially this one because you can kind of just swing with this willy-nilly to able to get the on delete to play another Commandramon, and this one's just a cheap buy to play. And then I have this Agumon, and I think it's actually kind of decent just because again, similar idea to the Goemon where you do play a lot of blockers, so you're able to kind of have this as the inherit to kind of gain memory. And this kind of helps because the start main phase, if your opponent has a Digimon, gain 1, which again it just helps you gain memory. And if you can't just keep this on the board, you're able to get another memory along with Satsuki and whatnot. Moving on to the champions, and while I think my lineup is pretty good, I can understand why you wouldn't want to play something like Ginrumon. So that's why you have, I think, something like Mokumon and the EX3 Sealsdramon. This one is good just because it gives jamming on the main body, along with the Yotone effect where it can give basically a lot of stuff rush, which is another way you can kind of close out games a lot easier since you do end up free playing quite a bit of stuff with, again, Oyumon along with Brigadramon. And Mokumon's just here because it's a hybrid for game, along with, since you do play mind link tables, you're able to kind of just evo over any of them and kind of spit them out end of turn while still having a blocker. And I think this one is pretty funny, and again, I really like it. So if you want to, you can go ahead and play at least 1 or 2 Mercury ones, I think. And for the ultimates, there really isn't any I would suggest running other than those ones that I have in my deck. But I think the promo Nightmon can be kind of useful sometimes, because you do again go wide, so that way you're able to just Hall Slammer for 7 and then kind of get rid of a body later on, which is really good. And for the Megas, again, Mega Gargoyle Ace is another solid choice, just because you're able to kind of suspend anything and stop something from Digi-Evolving. And the end of attack is really useful, just because you can get extra swing in with that. And I like to think that these two are still really solid options. The BT14 Doctormon is again another rush body, and since you would return 5 cards with it, you're able to kind of gain back 2, and that way you can finish game with this. And this one, of course, is a really solid option, just because you're able to kind of go into it for cheap, because you're able to reduce the memory cost. And when you play another Digimon, you can delete something with equal or less to the Digimon you played. So again, you can kind of say delete something that's 7 costs or lower with your ultimates, and I think that can be kind of useful. And since it's also an unsuspend, you can kind of use this as another way to finish game as well. And for Tamers, I still kind of think that the BT4 Izzy can be kind of funny, just because you're able to kind of rig your deck and gain memory, and since everything in the deck is black already, again, it can be kind of funny sometimes, especially if they hit insecurity. And while I wouldn't really suggest it at running more than 1, it could still be a funny option if you want to. And the Star Deck 15 tie, I think it's also again useful for the similar reasons why I say you could possibly want the Augur and the Ko, just because not only does it give you DP, it also lets you draw ones to help you cycle through your deck. And let's move on to some of the other options. I think black has a decent amount of removal stuff, so you're able to put in stuff like Iron Fisted Onslaught just to delete the highest play cost, or something like Triumph, since it's another Digivolve, and if you just all slam it onto the board, you're able to make one of your Digimon attack, and since you would want blockers, that's kind of helpful, along with especially if you have Bike 1 Ace, so that way you can kind of just combo off with that. And if you don't have any trainings, I think the black memory boost can still be effective, and while it doesn't grab with Tamers, it still looks at top 4 and grabs any Digimon, and a memory boost is still really effective to this day. So again, if you want to just replace, say, the trainings with memory boost, or if you want to use a mix of both, you can do that as well. And I put Zubukan Punch here just because this way, if possible, you're able to kind of maybe bump up your stuff up to 16k to be able to get the extra security check. And since if you again combo this off with the new Commander line, you're able to kind of just output more damage with that. And Kongu might be a little bit helpful, especially in this meta, since you might be facing a lot of rush decks, so that way they can't really talk with their lower level stuff. I think that can be kind of helpful. And again, say if you're playing sec control for some reason, you're able to kind of stop them for a turn, so that way they can't recover, and it might come up sometimes, but again, Kongu is a really good 2-cost option, I think. And that pretty much is my deck profile for my most recent Digi-Police deck. And this hasn't really changed all that much from my gameplay video, just because again, I really am fond of this version. And at worst, I might say swap around, say the Tantrumon if I feel like it's necessary, or I might try out a more low to the ground version. But again, for right now, I like this version, and I really want to hear your guys' comments on the list, along with kind of saying what you guys would want instead. Just again, leave those thoughts in the comments below, and thank you all for watching, and don't forget to like, comment, subscribe, and stay tuned to my later videos. Again, thank you all again for staying to the end, and see you guys later.